last class, we also recorded. And if you, I think all of us were there, but in case, I was about to give you all the link to come back here. That would not be very useful. In case you have wanted to revisit that and not known where to find it, I just dropped the link for the recording from the previous class in the chat. And that class, right, was mostly about finding offerings around the house, making use meaningfully and mindfully of what we already have available. In today's class, Shawneen, did you need something? I see you raised your hand.
I'm sorry. I was attempting to applaud your putting the recording from last class on, and I must have hit the wrong little. My apologies.
No problem. You're good. I just want to be like really on it with responding to people.
And you were.
I appreciate that. I'll try not to falsely do that anymore.
We'll just expect you to ask us questions.
Yeah, you just gotta come up with something. That'll be the game.
There we go. Thank you.
So today is more about the possibilities that we have in making offerings. And again, in doing that with very simple household tools and items that many of us already have available. Creates a lot of possibilities, not just for offerings, but for other things, including decorations, items that we use frequently, like bowls and other things. And to get us started, if people are willing, we can do a little bit of an icebreaker as we did last time. So we'll just kind of popcorn around. And since we're doing something so crafty, maybe tell us, what is your favorite craft or way to create and express your creativity in the world? And Jane, since you're one of our magpies, I am going to poke you first.
Sure. Jane Webster, you guys, everyone here knows me. I think my favorite crafts are, I like anything that gets me into sort of a flow state, and I kind of go through phases. I went through a long crochet phase. I went through a long painting phase. My most recent craft that I picked up was pottery, using a pottery wheel. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
You want to popcorn to somebody?
Nieves, you want to go next?
I'm not really a crafty kind of person, but I like to, I have a deep fascination with a lot of the morbid things. So I dry a lot of flowers, I dry a lot of random things. So I have tons of that around, so that's kind of crafty.
Very much so.
And then, I don't know, just because I can see you, Tracy, your turn.
That's fair. That's fair. Much like Jane, I tend to vacillate between crafts or art forms. Currently, my favorite is needle felting because I can stab things lots of times. And it's, again, it honestly kind of becomes meditative. You're just stabbing and focusing on this thing in front of you. And it's a very small thing and you're focusing on very small areas. And you move it until you shape this nothing into something. And that is just so satisfying. I love it. I'm going to pop it over to Wes, if Wes is okay talking.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, cool. Crafty. Hello. So obviously, like a lot of people in here, I'm always down for anything, but mainly lately I've been doing a lot of wood. So like etching and cutting wood. Doing a lot of that has mainly been my crafty as of late. And then obviously, making incense because I've been getting back into that as well. So that's pretty crafty too. And then I am going to pick, let's go Shawneen.
Can you hear me?
That is an affirmative. Yes.
Okay, very good. For me, it used to be woodworking and leatherworking, but my fingers don't work like they used to. But my long-term projects all surround gardening. And so my 25-year project is to garden a sacred space. And I'm happy to be sitting in it right now.
I love it. That's great.
Just a little bit. This is
Beautiful.
that's my backyard.
Mm.
I don't know how much that you can see, but I have a little stone circle for fires and a little stone circle to kind of keep the energy in. And the trees are all of as many of the Ogham sacred trees as I could cram into 1/5 of an acre. So right now that number is 13. It's been as high as 19 out of the 25. But winters, invasive insects, they take their toll. You have to keep replenishing the garden. So that's what I kind of do now. I'm retired, so it is my main job.
Thank you for sharing. That's lovely. Rev William, I think you're our last person if you want to speak.
Yeah, sure. I'm Reverend William, emeritus priest of Mountain Ancestors. Uh, when I was young, I used to draw a lot, but I've gotten out of the practice for some time. I play music as far as arts goes, but my favorite handy thing, crafty, is I guess cooking. I love studying different cultures and techniques uh, outside of. I went to French culinary school, so I'm classically trained in that way. But a lot of like Asian techniques from different Asian cultures and things, Middle Eastern techniques. Um, that's kind of my latest fascination. So, and I get to serve beautiful things, and then the watching people intake those beautiful things and enjoy them is part of my happiness when it comes to the things that I create.
Thank you all for sharing. And Rev Williams' introduction of himself just reminded me that just because we all know each other doesn't mean that anybody watching our recording is going to know. So a little late to the game, but hi, I'm Amy Gorniak. I'm the treasurer of Mountain Ancestors Grove. And thank you for joining us at this dual Mountain Ancestors Grove, Three Cranes Grove event. And you know, what Rev William shared about getting to see the way that people respond to the food we make is my longest running craft has been baking. And then once I became vegan baking and vegan gluten-free baking, which is much more like wizardry than it is like making food.
Sorcery.
But for that same reason, the joyfulness, I do a lot of other things, particularly needle arts and fiber arts and things like that. But and the crafting of words, but that's always been my favorite. And to more properly introduce Traci from Three Cranes Grove, who's gonna take us into the next part of today. Tell us a little bit about making our own offerings.
Yeah, I am slotted to talk for 10 minutes. I'm not going to do that. So essentially, part of the reason that we were deciding to do this activity specifically is a lot of times the things that some of us can afford or the things that some of us can bring into our lives are a bit out of reach. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make an offering of something that is from you, that is something that you can find made from things around your home, that also has great value. And part of that value is not just, because it's cost effective. The things that I think we're going to be using today, thankfully, most of us have some of these things in our house. But it just kind of begins to open your eyes to the things that you can create very inexpensively that are also very meaningful and can be used as tools to deepen your work, deepen your craft, and help you make offerings of value, even if you don't have a lot fiscally to offer. Some of the first offerings were valued animals, livestock that were valued because they could help feed your family, and you are choosing to give them over to the higher powers. And after that, when crafts started emerging historically, at first it was paint on a wall, handprints, and then as their understanding of the world and their beliefs deepened, they began to depict, their deities and things like that. And all of that was valued and can be valued, because back then what they had available to them was some berries and a wall in their hand. But they wanted to make sure that they made their offering, that they told their story, that they revered their kindred. And so I don't think that we think nowadays that that's still as valued. If you're not an artist who can make a masterpiece, a photorealistic painting or whatever, people tend to think that that's not as valuable. But part of the reason that I am just so passionate about teaching things like this is because the time and energy you put into creating something, even with inexpert hands, if you're not a sculptor by trade or by choice, you can still make something, and putting that energy into your work is what makes that offering valued to, the kindred. So let's see here. I think I have gone through all of my bullet points. So really, this is just a brief introduction into why we're here and what we want to talk about today. So I'm going to pass it back over to Amy.
Yeah, so much of it is about giving ourselves and each other permission to do the simple things that are often the most meaningful, because we're showing up to them with our own hands and our own hearts and what we have available already in our lives. And really accessing our creativity and our playfulness as humans, that is the foundation of learning, of building new connections within our own brains and neuronally as we do things in an embodied way with each other, when we do this in community as we are today, or with the kindreds, when we invite them to be part of the process by making things in ritual, or just simply by inviting our ancestors or the kind of nature kin that we might bring into in the form of herbs or colorings or other things, the offerings that we make. And also, the psychologist in me feels it is necessary to say that there are a lot of physical and mental health benefits and aspects to the process of creation and making meaningful things in our lives that are so beneficial to us. And there are so many ways that we can bring it directly into spiritual practice. I mentioned earlier making offering bowls or plates, temporary tools, things of that nature. We can also make statues and symbols, temporary decorations for specific seasonal or other events that are happening. We can make offerings that can be left outdoors if we use doughs and other items that are biodegradable as literal offerings to the space, to the land, to the nature kin around us. These things are very personalizable, not just to the specific ancestor or deity or nature kin that we might be making an offering to, but to our own intentions by bringing in bits of herbs, color, symbols, what we might carve or shape in them. And they can be incorporated into ritual in ways like using our waters of life in the dough that we make. I have some waters from one of Bridget's wells that I'm going to drop in my water that we're going to use today because I'm doing vigil today for her. Making offerings, making these items and using them as offerings for specific intentions or talismans or other kinds of tools in a long-term way, and then being able to release that back into the earth when we're done. There are some safety things that I'm going to point out real quick to think about. One is, how will the dough impact the environment? I didn't know this, but salt dough is toxic to dogs and cats. it will cause salt toxicity, salt poisoning, because of the high concentration of salt in the item. So if you have pets who like to nibble on your things, you might consider access for those animals. And if you're gonna hang it up outside, maybe don't put it where small animals are gonna be able to access it directly. Just being really earth friendly in how we think about the items we make today, and just more generally, if we're going to make something that we want to actually bury or place outside, we might use alternate, more biodegradable, earth-friendly materials. We also need to think about salt and soil and what that does to growing things. So placing these items specifically today with salt down in the earth really, well, kind of puts us in a situation of inviting wilting or other problems for our plants. So we might want to use an alternate material instead of directly placing these in the soil, especially if it's disturbed soil, like a container or a garden that we're in frequently, as opposed to kind of a more natural and wild area that might have healthier soil and be more able to respond to that. These are usually, for salt though specifically, safe to burn, but if you're going to burn items, think about, what are you making it with? Is anything that you're throwing into that item going to be toxic for you to inhale or anybody else or otherwise ingest? And is it going to explode? From what I read, these will not explode. They will burn. They will smoke a lot if they are not completely dry. And they might make interesting fire colors because they have so much salt in them, depending on the salt that you use. But things to think about when we're making our items is, how are we responsible in not just using them in the earth and outside and their long-term aspect, but for each other's safety and our own in community situations. So now that I have given the dire warnings for our salt dough materials, does anybody have questions, thoughts before we jump into getting started creating things? Yes.
So one thing I actually also figured out over time is when you do a lot of sweets and a lot of honey and different things like that, watch out for your insect population and things like that. So obviously, depending on where you go, and I tend to go, like you said, in more nature aspect places, so not where I live or anything like that. I started doing more things in the water and trying to space out where I put them in the water, so that if any animal or if anything gets disturbed, it's only in like certain areas, and then it's not for a very long time. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, and also like, so one of my, I brought down a couple of examples of things that aren't salt dough. So this is one of the simplest things that I do annually. Every year our family goes to pick apples in the fall. And I remembered when I was younger, and they were like, if you slice an apple in half, it looks like, it's got the star in the middle and the circle. Anyway, and so I started doing that with my kids. And so we would, every year we take an apple, we cut it in half, and we let it dry until the next year. And then we take it and offer it back to the land where we got the apples from in the beginning. So literally, I just let this puppy sit out on my nature altar and be mindful that there are no ants. Thankfully, they haven't found it. But, even as simple as just cutting an apple in half and letting it dry and sitting it back out. And that is, again, be mindful of areas that might be affected by apples, but for the most part, you can make anything into a meaningful offering. Sorry, I just felt like jumping in there because I forgot to mention it.
Well, and I think, Traci, if you're ready, it's time for us to get crafting.
Okay. All right,
Sounds like
everybody.
my
This
team.
is what we're really here for, is getting messy. Some of us are here for getting messy, at least. So first of all, we have some time to work on these things. But one of the things that I want to do, instead of just saying, here's some dough, let's make it together, and just all the world is available to you, because I don't know about anybody else, but there is nothing like more terrifying than a blank page, is a couple of ideas. So a couple of things that we can make with this dough, and we'll start putting it together if you haven't already, we have one offering, or one item that is like an offering or a communication tool. Like, you can make a couple of small circles and put yes on one side and no on the other if you want to do something simple like that, for divination. You can make offerings, and I literally wore these earrings because they're my favorite. This is just a Kuan Yin. It's a little Kuan Yin medallion, and it looks like a coin. And so, how many offerings have we seen of people leaving their money in places, sacred places? And while I don't have any ancient Hellenic coins, we can make them. We can make our own. And so those were two of the items that I was thinking about. We have space for two projects if we'd like to. So an offering of your choosing, something that's meaningful to you that you will then leave, or a communication tool. So one of the things, if you haven't already started and made your dough, I don't know how many people prepped ahead of time. I did not, because I like to get in the muck together. So I have cut down my recipe in a great deal because I made a bunch with my kids the other night, so I'm good. But while doing that, I learned that I would like to save some of the water and some of the flour, and don't pour it all in at once. So I start by just pouring my salt into the bowl first. And then I pour in a portion of the water, whatever waters you have. If you've got a body of water that's meaningful to you, even that makes an additional impact in the ingredients you use while making a sacred tool. So I get it so that I can still see a lot of the salt in the bottom, but there's still some water sloshing around. But I keep some of the water and set it aside, because when you get mixing, you'll start feeling like, oh, it's too dry, or oh, it's too wet. So I always keep some of that aside, set it aside, to help kind of get it to a consistency I like. And then you just start mixing. And of course, because of who I am as a person, I brought a fork and not a spoon. I don't know why. And and then once you kind of start getting it into little, they call it like if you're a baker, Amy, what is this called? Like the pebble stage. I forget what they call that, but it'll start to stick together and clump.
Like the crumb stage, like
Yeah, crumb stage. There we go.
like it looks like breadcrumbs, sort of, where it's making this small clumps.
And you just start really mixing it together. And then just continue adding a little bit of water and a little bit of flour until you get to a consistency that's like Play-Doh. It's not runny, and it's still moldable, but it's also not dry and crummy. It'll still stick to itself. I said right before we started the meeting that tonight I felt and looked like a mad baker, Miss Frizzle. And that's kind of what I feel like. Okay, and I also have, your fingers are probably going to get messy. That's just part of the joy of doing this. And so, while we're mixing, one of the things that I like to think about, especially if I'm making something, is what is the intent I am looking for here? Is this just going to be generic offerings that I'm making so that I have like a stash of them in case I feel inspired to make an offering? Is this something specific? I must add that the spork is the utensil for, yeah. I mean, yes, those of us who go both ways, spork works. But, but like, what is your intention? While you're stirring it, you can make that a small ritual. The ritual of stir it 3 times and say something, I'm healthy, I am healthy, I am healthy. And as you are doing that, the work of your body is part of the ritual, as part of the magic. But in addition, the intent can be mixed in. The intent can be like baked in as you are creating it. When I helped with the grove, our grove has a healing quilt, and I worked on both of them in each of their times. And you get kind of in a rhythm, and that can be a prayer too. And I had a prayer that I said each time I sewed two pieces together. And so, every stitch essentially had a prayer and an intention and magic made into it. I'm going to add just a little more flour to mine. And this is where about the part where when you start to get to almost exactly the consistency that you'd like, this is where you can start adding in additives. Do you have essential oil? Do you have herbs that you'd like to add? Sage for protection. Let's see, some bay for prosperity. And mistletoe for magic, things like that. This is where you could add those in. And again, the intention is part of the process. So when you think you have a pretty decent dough that holds a shape, usually I like to stick my thumb in and see if it sticks. As long as it can hold my thumb, my little thumb indent, that's usually a good sign. But you can keep adding a little more flour if you need to. I just realized I would be terrible with my own baking TV show because I'm running out of things to say while we knead dough.
I don't know about anybody else, but I have literally thrown salt dough bits all over my computer about 4 times now, all over myself a couple of times.
I literally am really messy when I do art. So I literally I'm wearing a apron, and I have a little tray out on my desk because I also know that is inevitable for me. So Amy was also talking about how it, depending on how dry your items are, it will determine how they respond to fire, to, other things. You can bake them, and we can get to that later in the process, to help speed up the drying process. And that's usually at 250, and you just let it sit until it looks like it's starting to dry, but we can talk about that in a little bit. Okay. I think I'm at a pretty good consistency here. So, I don't know if people are ready to start making things, but I am going to, like I said, I'm going to make a little coin using the earrings that I brought. And if you would like for it to bake, this would be a good time to start before you start building anything, getting out, if you've got tin foil, this would be when you want to do that. If you're interested in baking it, not letting it set out.
What's the
Salt,
temperature for the oven, Tracy?
it's usually around 250, and then just, keep an eye on it. It's one of those
Very
low and slow drying, like you're trying to dehydrate something slowly in your oven, because that's what you're doing.
Well, we should preheat now.
If you're going to bake, yep, that's probably a good idea. Okay. And if this isn't something that necessarily comes naturally to you, I just never stopped playing like a kid. So part of the joy in making for me sometimes is just getting messy, or I don't have the right tool because I didn't bring what I needed. So I'll just use the edge of this flashlight to use as the base of the, tracing out my coin. one of my favorite gifts from creating is being reminded that my brain is flexible. I can think out of the box and make something. And that's part of what this is, you know. We are so used to seeing, you know, these incredibly beautiful and expensive statuary that not everybody can afford. Or, you know, I remember a time when like actually just having gems to drop in a well was really out of my budget. But being able to do these make things is a way to kind of add not only value to what I give, but also allows me to have a direct hand in the creation of the gift that I'm giving. Okay, so let's see how Kuan Yin's gonna flatten. So I feel like we should have like some elevator music in the background or like lo-fi something.
People should also maybe feel welcome to hop off mute and share what you're making, what you're thinking about.
I'm making a mess.
I mean,
Delightful.
I think it's coming together. Looks sort of like dough. Oh no.
if it helps, Jane, you can separate the dough into smaller pieces. That makes it a little bit more manageable.
That might be.
I cheated because I made like a quarter recipe. My kids decided they wanted to make things with food color, but we only had orange, so we made a bunch of orange things. And if anyone has ever worked with like polymer clay, the thicknesses for baking are a little, they're close. You want it to be a little more dense with our clay here today, because it can crack. And it's, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this at all, but I have my little Kuan Yin coin. And then I can just let it sit. It's really thin, like I would say like three paper towels stacked on top of each other. And that's probably a little thinner than I would want most of the time because they can dry out too fast, but it's pretty thin. Now the whole issue with dry time is obviously like if you have ever baked or used polymer clay, the denser the object, the not only the longer it will take to dry, but the outside will dry before the inside. And if it's thicker than like an inch, that you'll want to keep an eye on it. And if you need to spritz the outside a little bit until the rest of it starts to dry, because if not, the outside will dry, and as the inside dries, it will shrink and the outside layer will crack. So that's just another thing to keep in mind about using this type of clay if you haven't. Sometimes I forget not everybody has tried every single craft like me.
Chrissy, I remember when we were at one of your polymer clay sessions, one of the things that we made was a little tiny anvil with a little tiny flame. So pretty simple to mold that
Yeah.
and have it as an offering to any of the fire related goddesses. In that case, it was Breach.
Yep. Well, Briege and also Hephaestus is my homeboy, so I get double anvil time. Like we've got both of them in our home.
it's a pretty easy thing to model with your fingers, is what
Well,
I
same
found.
thing with with like a hammer or any kind of primitive tool you can make really easily in clay. And so yeah. I think if I recall correctly, that was also the polymer clay class of multiple phalli. So many. So many.
There were a few. But we did other things too. We did quite a few different things.
That's true. And actually, I think so. I also cheat because this gets kind of dusty, and I just have like wet wash or wet paper towels or washcloths handy because I do make a mess. But one of the other things I made around that same time, Shawnee, and I think it was at that class or another that I made a garnis crane. This is back when I had almost no money at all, but I had a bunch of clay left over. So this has been in my home probably before I had kids. And not only was it because I didn't have the money to buy a statue, I don't know where I would have found a fancy crane statue at that time. Like, so I made my own, and I've actually made a couple of mini ones and gifted them to people. But part of the joy in putting that on top of my nature altar is that I made it. Like there's a sense of pride I think that I take in having crafted something with my own hands to assist me in my piety. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can without one thing that is a little tricky using salt clay, depending on how well it's mixed, is the impressions. Sometimes the impressions are not as distinct, like lines are not as clearly defined as they might be in like polymer clay, but
I'm also finding it tricky to roll out long, skinny, sort of I'm trying to make a Regis cross, a simple one, since it's a middle day. And finding that rolling it into a ball first makes it easier to turn it into spaghetti afterwards.
nice.
So I know nothing from nothing, but you can also take some kind of implement and almost like create the strands. So just flatten it and then create the strands.
That is very clever.
So I'm committed now because I feel like I'm seeing progress. I'm making a cow. It's gonna be a cow
Ooh.
face, but right now it looks like an alien. But if I dub the cow,
There you go.
so like I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing.
Well, and you spoke words that I have heard only initially from Reverend William. I dubbed the pig. But one of the another benefit to doing this is, yeah, I don't have a leg of lamb to offer. I don't have a fatted calf. And so you can make your fatted calf and worship it or offer it. So this is a thicker coin that I just made. I'm trying to, I don't have a really good reference, but I would say it's about half of my fingertip thick. This will be good to dry without worrying about cracking. However, I'm going to want to flip it because the bottom will stay wet if it's touching a solid surface while it's drying. So if you have the outside dried on part of it, then you can flip it and set it and let it dry on the other side. I'm trying to remember all of the little notes that I was like, I should put in our agenda so I won't forget. And if it starts to get a little dry, you can sprinkle on a little bit of water. Mine is getting a scotch dry. I'm trying to keep my eye on the time here. Oh, we've got plenty of time.
So how sturdy are these going to be once they dry? Like, is this a substance someone could use to, for example, make their own OM or rune set? Is it going to hand up to that much, hold up to that much handling?
Yes, and if you'll give me just a second, I forgot to bring them down. I'll run up and show you the ones we made 2 nights ago so that you can see what they've dried to and what they sound like, what they look like.
How are your salt dough reeds, Amy?
They're okay. At the moment, I am about to have their size lengthwise to try to weave with them actually. We'll see how that goes. I may greatly regret that decision. In which case I smush it all back together and start over again, because that's the joy of crafting in dough. Okay, sorry. I was trying to find another one. So these are the things we made 2 nights ago. So I made a bowl, a little offering bowl, and Joe may have left it in the oven a little too long, but even being extra brittle, can you see this scorched part right here? It's a little extra brittle, like, but these are strong. Like, I don't know how to explain the temperature or the texture, but they're pretty strong. And as far as how long they last, my son made this like 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it's essentially, it hardens like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a comparison. Just like hard clay. I mean, so
Like
the items,
sandstone, but less fragile.
yeah, that's good. Yes. So if you are going to be making ohms, or any smaller item, just make sure. So like, again, this is the first thing that I made tonight, the really, really thin one. And this is the thicker one that I made. It's kind of hard to tell, but this will be a lot safer to travel with. I could make a set of divination tools out of this. I would be really nervous about them breaking. But yeah, once this one dries solid, I mean, it's kind of clunky and not particularly, it's not something that I would want to sell in a store, but it would be perfectly fine and useful. You just need to make sure that it dries fully, and then it's pretty darn sturdy. Especially if you bake it. Baking them gives them also a little bit more strength. I don't know what the word is for them. I'm not great at wording. I'm great at doing.
One thing I could word is that because of all the salt in the dough, they tend to be hydrophilic. So if you put them down in the basement, they'll draw damp, and
Oh,
if they get moisture in them, then they get kind of messed up. They lose their integrity. So keep them really dry. Store them above ground.
you can also paint them over top of them once they dry. So you can cover them in acrylic paint. You could put what is I'm having so much trouble wording. It's because I'm trying to do something with my hands and my mouth, and apparently I can't do that. So the
Sealant?
some kind of sealant. Yeah, like a glaze. That's the word I was thinking of. You can make put a glaze over them.
There are now new water-based poly finishes. You can just
Did you say
use them
water-based?
or paint or dunk them in that or actually paint them with it.
I heard about half of what you said, darling. I'm sorry. You said,
Sorry. It's any better?
yeah.
They now make water-based polyester finishes for wood. You could use that, dunk them in it, or paint them with it, and that would form a layer that would probably stop that water contamination problem.
That is good to know. All right. How are we looking on our first projects? It's fine if we only do one. It's absolutely fine. We have time to do a couple.
Haven't seen enough cows, obviously.
I really need it to be like one of those Renaissance paintings of horses where like the horses have stick legs and huge knees and
I mean, in their defense, asking an animal to hold still long enough to model for a painting might explain why there are so many weird looking cats in old paintings.
yes, cats too.
Okay, we're getting something.
I love
Adding
it.
a mouth made all the difference. Oh.
This is when a good host would just come up with random witty banter. So when my kids were making these the other night, we were looking up some, floral and or herbal correspondences, and they one of the things that they found was hyacinth for happiness, and we happen to have hyacinth in our garden. So we were able to run out and cut our own and grind it up, and my kids were like, I want to use the mortar and pestle because they never get to use it. So they got the opportunity to do that, and then they incorporated it into their dough, and it smelled great.
I have another salt dough question.
Yes.
So, what are the origins of salt dough? Like, I understand, like,
Oh
teachers
boy.
probably just started this with, kids in schools, but it's such simple ingredients that I imagine it has some sort of prior origins.
That would have been an amazing thing for me to have prepared.
I'm
Let's
sorry.
see. No, I mean, honestly, I remember making it when I was a kid. I think our kindergarten teacher just, and while I also feel, I feel responsible to mention that I understand that making crafts with food is, not something everyone has access to, or the food would be better served in their bodies, and that's totally fine. But I think one of the reasons that I would, when we were talking about what we could do, this was the simplest to me, is because it is the most accessible. Most people have salt. Let's hope we all have water. And if you are a baker in any way, you'll probably have flour or have relatively easy access to get cheap flour. But I'm literally Googling to see if I can find any history on it. I don't know the origins.
I mean, whatever you can say would be totally awesome. We don't need it to be perfectly researched. It's all good.
Let's see. Oh, well, if without really doing any kind of checking or validation, it says the practice of using flour, water, and salt to create objects dates back to ancient Egyptian times. Mostly because they used salt dough specifically because salt acted as a preservative, ensuring the longevity of created objects. Apparently, there is a strong German and Pennsylvania Dutch influence. It was brought over from Germany, which I don't know why they would say Pennsylvania Dutch influence while saying it came from Germany. But one of the things that I remember making when I was little were salt dough ornaments for Christmas. And apparently that's a fairly common, inexpensive way to make ornaments for people that maybe don't have lots of extra resources. I'm just trying to see. Everything I just says quote unquote ancient Egyptian times, which to me, I feel like I would prefer a little more in-depth citations in my words here. Anything I can see just says ancient Egyptian times.
Okay.
We make salt dough ornaments, yeah, every year for the holiday. Yeah. I remember making it, I think, in kindergarten or preschool. And there are classes in like college classes on ceramics, specifically making only stuff with salt dough. Interesting.
Huh. Okay.
I meant to mention this earlier, but the flour part can also be one-to-one replaced with any kind of gluten-free flour. So even if you just have rice that you've accidentally, I don't know about you, I have accidentally dropped some salt or something in my rice before. I've been like, whoa, crap. I don't think I can eat that ever again. Tossing that in a coffee grinder or a food processor or whatever can give you some really quick rice flour to use for this purpose as well. So any not just expensive gluten-free flours, but the kind of easier to make ones work as well.
I made the mistake of touching my mouth and I feel like I've been in the ocean. And one of the fun things about this is it can just be used as Play-Doh. If I were to put this in an airtight bag while it's still moldable, it will continue to stay moldable. Just also be mindful because it's food stuff that it might be moldy and moldable.
Oh, the ears were good, and then I decided I was going to improve. Should have just left them, let them be ears.
Sound like every artist ever, myself included. I have a tendency to over futz with things, F-U-T-Z, futz with them. And yeah. Learning when to step away. Ooh, moderation. Look at me using those virtues. There is moderation in art as well, knowing when to step away from a piece or get perspective. Okay, so let's see. We're rounding. I don't know where all your time zones are, but 8 o'clock on my time zone. So we've rounded an hour.
I always forget we're in the same time zone.
Yeah. I just assume everybody lives in either Colorado or Texas. That's not in my Grove. If you're not in my Grove, you live in Colorado or Texas. That's how my brain works.
That's most of us.
Then again, the Pennsylvanians, I still consider to be Ohioans, so I don't know. I'm trying to make petals as thin as I can, and I'm really pushing some boundaries of space and time here.
So I think the last question is, how big are cow eyes?
I mean,
Let's see. Well, how just the answer, but how much of them are we gonna see? Oh, yeah, see, that's too big. Stuck. Now they're stuck.
as big as the moon. That's right. That's right.
Maybe it'll be better with eyelids.
Look,
It
I
does
have,
tend to make a difference in eyes. Like if it's supposed to have an eyelid, it
yes,
suddenly looks more real because you put a little flap of something over the edge of it to make it
and
look.
less horrifying usually. I feel like there's no creepy eye, no creepy eye that an eyelid can't fix.
Okay.
Today I learned that a skill that you can do with one item, like a reed, is not necessarily immediately translatable to the same physical capacity with another item like soft floppy Play-Doh.
Well, pretend like you're weaving dough, right? Like you're making woven bread. I don't know. I have so little luck with dough without making a huge mess. I don't know how those YouTubers and food people don't end up with like clumps of dough on their hands because I always do.
Staff. I think they have staff.
They can edit. That's okay.
Yeah. The magic of a production department.
Man, I wish I had one of those sometimes. And if you find something that you have made that you are pleased with and would like to share, I would be so tickled if you shared pictures, either through the Facebook event or however you can post it to the Magpies Facebook if you don't mind me inviting people to add things to your Facebook page.
Not at all. That would be a lovely.
There's two big ones inside the Japanese spurge.
Well,
I'm not sure he was talking. Were you talking to us, Shawneen? Oh, that's okay. I'm looking at the item. So one of the things that if you are going to bake a piece and it's more than just a flat item, I encourage you to use, if you're not used to sculpting and baking things, supports. So when I made my little bowl, my offering bowl, I put tin foil inside it and held it upside down so that it baked in its shape. And if you have an item that has legs and needs to stand, using tinfoil supports that can be baked, or anything that you can use that would be able to be baked to support the weight while it bakes, will help keep it in place. And if you wanted to, and you had the wherewithal and supplies, you could make wire armatures if you wanted to get even more, fancy about it. If you wanted to make of course, this is polymer clay, but the idea remains the same. Inside this little bird body is a really tight ball of tinfoil to help keep it kind of hollow so that it bakes quickly. But also I used tinfoil, I crumpled it up and put it under his batut and in between his legs to help keep him upright while he was baking. Those are just a couple of ideas. Oh, he's got a little crack. A couple of the ideas to help, if you do decide to, bake it or dry it really. If there are open spaces where it might fall, having some type of support system while it's drying is really helpful.
If it is a larger or thicker piece, do you recommend drying it for a little bit before baking it or baking it immediately?
See, the reason okay, So I am not like a chemist, or I'm not. What I do know is if you bake it in the oven, the temperature is going to be more consistent than if you were to leave it out. Because if you're just leaving it out, instead of like putting it in a pre-baked oven, the outside shell is going to dry first. And it's going to dry fast. These things tend to get dry pretty quickly, if left out. So I would recommend a low temperature bake. And unfortunately, because you can't necessarily tell what piece is going to bake at what time, just keep an eye on them.
All right. I think the eyelids worked. I'm so excited to share this.
Oh, yay! I love it.
Okay.
This is my favorite part. It's when we start sharing.
The difference is pretty impressive between eyelids and no eyelids. All right.
Oh my gosh, Jane, stop
That's
it.
wonderful, Jane.
I don't want to tilt it any further in
Nope.
case it slides off my sheet here.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Were you naysaying yourself earlier? I believe I remember you naysaying yourself earlier.
Okay, so I told you guys it's a cow. If I hadn't told you it was a cow and I hadn't put ears on it, it's a little bit alien. But the crescent, the crescent nostrils and the mouth, I think those are cow shapes.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
And here I am making the simplest shapes possible, mostly because I have learned a valuable lesson, and that is I'm not great at talking while I'm sculpting. It's good to know thyself, right?
I did not think about amount of salt dough I was going to have from this until after you'd said something. And because I walked in my front door 10 minutes before class from work, I just dumped my salt and flour into the bowl together.
Yeah,
So,
I feel bad that I should have said that ahead of time, but
I'm the one who put the details of what we needed in the class. Like I probably should make that up. But I have way more than I need, and I've used some waters from one of Bridget's wells in them. So now
yay.
I'm like, what am I gonna do with all this?
You don't want to waste it now, so
We were talking during the class or the meeting where we all talked about what we were gonna do. We were talking about making a set of oracle dice. So now I'm like, what would be some symbols that I could put on some oracle dice? If I can come up with 20 symbols, maybe I'll make myself a giant 20-sided die.
that would be amazing.
That sounds not balanced.
It does.
You would not be able to bring that to
everyone's D&D table. Well, and I think I would make myself a little mad by trying to get all of all the sides flat. That's again, I know myself, and knowing myself means I will leave that project to Dr. Amy.
Who's going to do exactly the same thing?
And so really quickly, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and it's not talk about, but a couple of ideas. So let's say that you are making a giant, okay, this is a giant pendant, but you're making a pendant, and you don't want to be necessarily too, you don't have a bunch of tools. Literally, instead of adding chains or anything, you could just literally just make a hole and then string a ribbon or a ribbon or some type of cord through it, and it will dry and the hole will be there. And like I cannot stress enough how little you need to make something that is useful and valuable and will help you deepen your piety. It's doesn't take much. Just your right attitude and good intention. So we have a little over 15 minutes to go.
Does anyone have the list of intentions nearby?
I do. Yep.
What are the options for something like protection, warding, anything
Ooh,
like
all
that?
kinds. Do you want herbs?
Just start reading things. I'll
Black pepper, salt, sage for protection, bay, coconut flakes.
actually let me brainstorm with the class. So one of the things that we're about to move, and one of the things that I want to do before we leave is do some sort of working to sort of take down some of the protective work we've done around the house. And my thought was, depending on how these dry, how these do, doing a bunch of little pieces that I put at all of the windows and doors and things, places where we did this working, and then let it sort of sit with the protection, absorb the protection, and then snap them. Something to sort of take that energy back, or some, I don't know.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Salt is often used as a neutralizer, right? And flour is a very kind of neutral base ingredient as well. Water carries energy really well. All of them would be really absorptive. I don't even know what the adjective is that I'm looking for there today.
Absorb words.
Yeah.
I follow.
My brain wants to say absorbitant, but that's not the right word that we're looking for at all.
So you could also, I mean, I'm going to use the word liberally, but purification to kind of that to me like cleanses what space that you're in. So things that would be for purification, like let's see here. I just saw it. Do I have a nope over here? So I'm sorry. Now I have officially too many windows open. Okay. Oh, bay leaves can also be used for purification. Birch, bark,
Yeah.
thistle, chamomile, or chamomile. I don't.
Chamomile. Oh, that's perfect. You know what?
Yay! And I don't know about anybody
From
else's
my
garden.
garden.
I was gonna say I've got a lot of dandelion leaf. That's another one, which I've got plenty of in my yard.
Right.
And another thing that I am making right now, I'm really just sticking with the coin shape today. Just because it's simple. And I'm just gonna, and I've got extra left over. So I'm gonna make two little like I guess talismans, one for each of my kids, and I'm just pushing my thumb, like my thumbprint into the little coin. I'm gonna let them dry and I'm gonna slip them in their backpacks.
And I just wanted to name that Wes mentioned dead nettle as well as a good option for that kind of purification. And Shawnee added juniper berries and dried leaves.
Thank you. I know that there's dead nettle outside, so I don't have any juniper. I appreciate all of the suggestions. Thank you, everyone.
Recently learned that all parts of the juniper have a different smell.
Really, I've got a juniper in my backyard. I should check that out.
So I was doing a forest bathing mindfulness thing, and the resin has almost like a delightful, like citrusy, almost lemony scent to it. It was so fresh. Very different from what I associate with the juniper berries and needles. So that was just really interesting to learn.
Neat. Oh, and in case anybody else wants to know, garlic, good for protection. Man, or not protection, purification. I must be very pure. I'm a big fan of garlic.
Garlic is literally a purgative if you overdose on it, and you can overdose on it.
Is it really?
So if you take heart medicine, you should watch how much garlic you eat, because it has an active effect on your cardiac function. It's a lot of garlic. I was based, the story is hilarious how I ended up.
You're about to break my heart here, Amy.
It was several like cloves of garlic that were that I ended up eating as part of a meal that I was being very nice that somebody made for me to have a vegan option. And I was like, I'm gonna eat it even though this is like burning my mouth with raw garlic. It's fine. It was not fine. But it will make you sweat garlic, and it will make you very nauseous and all kinds of things. So it is a purifier physically as well, but can be over consumed, especially if you're on heart medicine.
That is good to know.
The things you learn.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, there was another story about learning about medical side effects from excessive consumption of one ingredient. So watermelon has a compound called tyramine, which for some people is a migraine trigger. I did not know that this was a migraine trigger for me. And I ate a lot of watermelon. And in Guam, the best thing about being a grown-up and no one can tell you no is you can get a whole watermelon to yourself, cut it in half, and just go at that thing with a spoon. So I started with the watermelon, and I ate about half the watermelon. And I started getting a headache, and I'm like, I clearly must be dehydrated. I should eat the second half of this watermelon.
Oh no.
And I ate the second half of the watermelon, and I woke up the next day and I'm like, man, I'm just not drinking enough water. Guam is really hot. I just must be really dehydrated. I'll open the second watermelon. And at this point, the headache was bad enough. I had to look it up. I was not okay for like 48 hours at least. So learn from my mistake. Tyramine.
Rachel.
Ones of too many.
Rachel.
Y'all, how's it going?
Yay, you made it.
Oh.
It only took me like 2.5 hours to get home, but no big deal.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That sounds crummy.
Yeah.
Well, we have 10 minutes left.
You serious?
We are glad you chose to join us for that 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
Hey, y'all, our dinner guests are arriving. I'm going to have to dip out, okay?
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Well done,
Thank you for joining
Traci.
us.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Hey, Rachel, would you like to touch back on important points that came up?
No. I love you, Traci. Can't believe you had to ask.
That is the best possible answer. What?
Important points that came up for me today.
Oh, no.
You eat a lot of watermelon and you get a headache, and you eat too much garlic and it's bad for your heart medicine. So those are things I'm gonna take away.
It's actually really important.
I wouldn't have known it had I not shown up. So this is good.
Oh, sorry, I missed Shawneen. Bye, Shawneen.
Thank you, by the way, for putting the list together of the ingredients for various intentions. That absolutely paid off. I really appreciate it, you
I
guys.
think Amy did the majority of that work.
Oh, thank you, Amy.
You are very welcome. It was definitely, it started with the first time that we really met and talked about this, but
That was a very good idea. And well executed.
and it is the very minorest of lists. One thing that sticks out to me from doing that is bay leaf is used for literally everything.
Everything.
It came up on every single list. I don't know how many of you were Scott Cunningham era pagans. I am old enough to have been I was in, I think, 7th grade when I was introduced to Scott Cunningham. And I remember, in fact, my shelf still has all of his various encyclopedias on it, that he had said at one point, it was kind of controversial later, that rosemary was an herb that you could use for anything. You could replace it for any subject. And in various circles since then, I've had people be like, why rosemary? What? Rosemary is not, what are you talking about? But it seems that for different cultures, bay leaf is absolutely that. It came up on lists for just about everything, including just sort of all-purpose, write what you like on it and set it on fire, and it doesn't matter what your reasoning was, because it was a bay leaf, it will be empowered, which is, you know, fascinating.
Well, and there's also, the belief that maybe you don't have the exact thing you need. Maybe you don't have activated charcoal. That's but again, I name the cow, and I have this thing, and this is my intention, and I'm giving you this thing. I may not give you the exact thing, but as long as the intention is there, the energy is there, and they know what we mean. We're just essentially turning what we create into like magic gifts for them. So like the process of giving the gift is what makes it, if you don't have all of the things. Like I remember when I was maybe not in the 7th grade, but I was a late bloomer, and seeing like all these things like chrysophrase, you can only use that for like any stone working, and I'm like, I've never even heard of that, let alone where would I get it. This was also back before you could just buy rocks on the internet if you needed to. But I was told by someone at a ritual, one of the first rituals I went to, if you don't have the thing you want to offer what you have. Mm-hmm. And I think like I used to really get caught up in, oh gosh, do I have the specific thing from this list that I read from this person that I appreciate? I'm like, I don't have rose hips. That's not a thing I've got in my house. But I can substitute it with a thing I have that means love to me. Like chocolate means love to me. Like it's rich and deep, and so much work goes into making chocolate, and that is a gift that is like, it always has been like love to me. And so it doesn't have to be, I guess that's one of the things, how making ritual more accessible. It's one of the things we have in our notes. And literally making ritual more accessible. That's really one of the things that we wanted to like impart. And Rachel, I'm just going to steal some of your talking points to end, because we've got about 4 more minutes. Rachel, your hand is raised. Do you want to say something?
I did want to say something.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
About the accessibility. Whenever I think that word offerings are not sufficient, I remember that all Christians do is pray. Like they don't do anything fancy. They literally just are like, they put their hands together, they bow their heads, and they say some words. And that is literally good enough for them. And I'm like, why do I think that me not sitting here offering words of like prayer for other people is not sufficient? And it's just like this weird pagan dichotomy that like we got so wrapped up in the stuff. You must have the stuff
of paganing. Yes.
You must have the stuff. And it's like, wait a minute. if it's one thing that I actually maybe think Christians did right, it was like hands together, say some words. You got this.
Absolutely. And honestly, that is an amazing segue into our next class. Amy, did you want to talk about that, or you want me to just keep blabbering on? I can do that, or Jane.
Um,
Oh, God.
our next class is going to be crafting your own ritual words. So showing up and with the words that are in your head and your heart already, just saying the thing to the deities, to the ancestors, to the nature kin about subjects. And hopefully we'll get really playful with it and really have some fun. We're gonna maybe do some Mad Libs, some other games and things, and maybe craft a prayer or two together so that by the time that we leave at the end of that hour and a half, everybody will have experience doing this, just saying the thing.
That's amazing. Look, and we buttoned this up so nicely. Look at that. So I just wanted to share a couple of things that I made. If people wanted to do the same for the last few minutes, I made a big flower. I'm going to be drying this out and painting it for Beltane. Another little coin, a yes or no divination coin, Kuan Yin, and then the two little protective amulets. And that's out of the quartered recipe. So I made all those things out of the quartered recipe. What other people like to share? We've already seen Jane's amazing freaking cow.
Cow's already in the oven, so I'll share
That's
pictures if it survives.
Wes, I saw you raise your hand. Don't turn that hand off.
No, I was clapping, saying good job.
Oh, that was a clap, not a hand raise.
Yeah, I was loving them. Yeah.
Well, if anybody else would like to share, Amy, are you?
I will share just because it's so ridiculous. Actually, I can't share because it falls into I have a flying spaghetti monster.
Love it.
I love it.
Because the dough is not quite sturdy enough to hold the shape as an actual woven object, I think right now.
I see.
Maybe if I add extra flour to it, but I'm just gonna make one that's kind of a bas relief instead, based with I don't know how you pronounce that instead, and stick it on my little circle that I made. I have a circle.
Yay! Look at us making our ritual stuff.
Yeah.
Yavis, are you going to be sharing anything?
So unfortunately, I just got on right after I got off of work.
Oh,
So
that's
I did
okay.
not have time to do anything. So I was like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to bring ingredients. Okay.
Well, we are very grateful for you joining us.
Did you get well, never mind. I'll reach out to you.
It's cool. Whatever. I still liked watching and all the things. It's all still good.
It has been delightful to share space with everybody this evening.
Yes. Thank you for everybody for joining us. Thank you for the Mountain Ancestor folk for welcoming me back again.
So glad to have you.
It has been a delight doing these classes together.
Yay. Well, I've got some baking to do.
Quick admin things. I will post to Facebook and the Google Calendar once we have a date for the next class. We will also drop a link in this Facebook event when this recording is posted and when we have our next date. And our next Mountain Ancestors event is on May 3rd at 9 a.m. Colorado time. Extrapolate out to your time zone. That is an in-person and virtual event if anyone would like to drop in.
Thank
Yay.
you. I just wanted to ask if it was in person. So yay.
Yes, in person. And then Traci, anything three cranes you want to shout out? I don't know if is there anything virtual coming up?
I mean, we do all of our rituals virtually. So our Beltane is going to be posted on our Facebook group. And if you would like to join us virtually, there will be a link. We almost always have a Zoom open for our rites. And we're already starting to be on the lookout for Summerlands 2025 information. It's going to be coming out soon. So
very exciting.
Yay.
Well,
all right.
fun. Do you want to wrap us up, Jane?
No, I was gonna hand it over to you.
It has been a delight to spend the evening with you all. Thank you for joining us at Mountain Ancestors and Three Cranes Grove for this evening, sharing your voices and your thoughts and your time with us. And we will hopefully see you next time.
All right. Take care, everyone.